Another day, another milk. Today we are going to make hazelnut chocolate milk with a little bit of oats. We're going to let the oats thicken it up a little bit for us. We're going to sweeten it with some soaked dates. Well, we're going to use some cocoa powder and a little bit of vanilla. And my hazelnuts are raw. Always with oats and nuts, you could roast them or not roast them. That is totally up to you. So with the Miomat, it has this grinding cylinder, but it doesn't filter the milk. So just know that. If you wanted this to filter on its own, you would want to use an almond cow or a soy Bella, or maybe the Nutrimilk, which I just got, and the review is coming very soon. So with anything that looks like the pitcher type, if it's a smaller or a larger one, you want to add your ingredients, then add your water to in between the minimum and the maximum fill line. All right, so this was about 4 dates that I soaked in some warm water to make them a little easier to blend. They were hard as a rock. So if you have medjool dates that are super juicy and ready to go, you don't have to do that. Okay, so I'm going to take about a half a cup of hazelnuts, a heaping half cup of hazelnuts. And that is also a half a cup is the equivalent of 1 Miomat cup, which I don't have right with me, but all the milk makers come with something. I'm going to put 2 tablespoons of oats to kind of add it as a thickener. So we're going to use the raw milk setting on the Miomat, which is a little confusing because it meets the raw food requirements of heating, meaning it doesn't go over a certain temperature, but it does heat. Since I didn't soak these hazelnuts, I'm going to be glad for it. It's going to make it easier for me. But if you didn't want to heat it at all, you would still use this cylinder because it comes on and off, right? And use the smoothie setting. Will give you a no heated milk. So let's look overhead again. Let me get it where I can see where the min and max is, which is down there. You can sort of see the lines there. And the min is 1100 milliliters, and the max is 13 milliliters. And it's still quite way down from the top. And if you're wondering why that is, as it's agitating everything, things come up and you don't want it to just spurt out everywhere. So it's important to do that. Now I'm going to put in about a half a teaspoon of vanilla. And then I want to make this kind of like Nutella milk. So I'm going to add, and you can add more cocoa if you want it to be dark chocolate. Add less cocoa to make it more lighter or milk chocolate. I think I'm going to start, I'm going to do 2 tablespoons. And this is going to be quite a rich milk. So you could use it in your coffee as creamer, which is what we usually do. And we drink mostly iced coffees. So if you want to see some of the lattes I've made with the smaller heated milk makers, be sure to check those out too. I haven't used this machine with the cocoa powder yet, so I'm very interested to see how it blends. Okay, so I'm going to put that on there. And that on there means I'm going to put the top on. It connects. Then I'm going to hook it up to the power. And you can kind of see, you see it almost better this way, don't you? Oh, look, you can kind of see it from here. See how it's hard to see the lights sometimes? And I'm going to use the select button. I'm going to get the raw milk setting. And then it's going to start in a minute. So why a minute? Why not right this second? Because it's heating up. It's going to heat up, then it's going to blend, and then it's going to stop for a minute. It's going to blend, and it's going to stop for a minute. I think this cycle takes about 5 to 10 minutes. So we'll wait for this. Then we'll taste our milk, see if we need to add any more sweetener or if we want more cocoa in there. So you'll start hearing a sound that sounds like a kettle's being put on. And then after that, it's going to go ahead and blend and stop, blend and stop. Then we'll take this out. We will taste it, see if we need to do something different, or if maybe the hazelnuts don't blend up as fine as I think they can, I will go on this cycle one more time. So this is the sound you hear when it's done. So that's how you know. It's not hard, but it takes about 5 to 10 minutes. And you might at first, when you're working with a milk maker, and you can stop it by unplugging it, you might start to think it's broken because it'll go nothing. And there's not really a thing to go, hey, we're pausing. But what it's doing is it warmed up the water, it blended some, so it broke things up into smaller pieces. Then it blended real good, then it let it soak. And it goes back and forth. I've got a bowl here. If I have the grinding cylinder there, it'll sit up in a bowl nicely and catch anything. Well, that looks really nice and frothy. It smells good. I'm going to take a spoon and drag around the corners and the bottom just to see if there are like any big pieces. And I'm not seeing that. It's not strained yet, so I mean, it's not perfect. You can see like on the spoon, see how there's all these little bitty pieces. I'm going to taste this. I'm trying to decide. I think it's got enough chocolate bitterness, the cocoa or cacao bitterness to it. I think it could use just a tad more sweetener, but I can just stir that in or shake it in. And see, this has very little in here. The bowl doesn't have a lot in here, but that's a lot to clean up off my counter. So I'm going to take my glass container. I'm going to have a funnel. And I'm going to strain it. I don't think we're going to strain out much. I feel like the Miomat does a really good job of grinding things small. Okay. And I'm just using a bar filter. It's a fine mesh strainer. And if you haven't seen me do this before, once it's full like this, all you have to do is drag your spatula across the floor, because it's basically the little particles are clogging it up. And if you move them around, that causes it to strain right out. And see, that's the pulp right there. We still have some more pulp to go. So after the first time it fills up and gets a little bit full, we may have to do it more often, because that means there's some pulp in there. In the beginning it pours really freely. The closer to the end you get, you have to do a little more stirring. Also, the closer to the end is where some of the pulp and the sediment is settling, right? That's another reason you might have to do this more. All right. Now, we are heating up the oats. If we were making just oat milk, I recommend using the smoothie setting and not heating it up at all. But what we're doing is using those 2 tablespoons of rolled oats heated to kind of help make it a little more cohesive, make it a little bit thicker, a nicer mouthfeel. Because compared to what we're not using a cup of oats, we're just using a little bit. And if you're making a warm latte in a small milk maker, you can do it with oats as well. It's more of an issue of things get slimier the longer they're around as well, unless you're picky. And if you're picky, making your own plant-based milk is the best thing to do, because that means you get to make it just the way you like it. And I could also have used a larger mesh strainer or a nut milk bag over a jar. This is just how I've been doing my milks and I like it. It's easy, cleanup is easy. It also gives a good example of just how little sediment is left after a lot of these milk makers. And I think that's helpful for you guys to see. I think we've got at least 1 or 2 more of these stirs to do. And so I'm going to use this in the cold brew coffee that I make. And we're going to make basically like Nutella iced coffees that are date sweetened and have cacao in them, or cocoa, whatever you want to use. Could you make just hazelnut milk or just vanilla hazelnut milk? Of course you can. And you, actually, I'll let you see this in a minute. There's some sediment at the bottom. And we're also going to go ahead and clean the machine, I think. It has a cleaning cycle, the Miomat. If you have like the Soy Joya that does not have a cleaning cycle, you could use whatever warm cycle. I wouldn't use the soy milk cycle, and let it warm up with a little bit of soap in it, like maybe like 1 drop. Okay, so you can see there's still some sediment in here. I will either rinse this out before I clean it, just because I can, it's right now. Also, look, that's all the sediment that's left, which is pretty awesome. So this is it after I just rinsed it. I didn't use a sponge or anything like that. I just rinsed it. And also, before I add stuff and clean it, I'm going to clean this and make sure that you take this off because gunk gets hidden in here. So I filled this up just under the minimum. I'm going to put this back on, and then we're going to press it until it gets to this cleaning button, which is the last one at the bottom. So I'm just going to plug it in again. Use the select. Okay, that's the cleaning cycle. You can hit the start button, and it'll just be a minute or 2 before this starts up. You can hear this is quieter than when it's blending. And another reason that you're keeping this a little bit lower than the maximum is because it doesn't have any kind of viscosity or heaviness in it. So it's more likely to overflow some. Okay, so it beeps just like it does when it's done. And you can see it's all frothy goodness in here. And what we're going to do then is we're just going to rinse it really well in the sink. And then we're done. And then usually what I do is I just turn it upside down. If you have like a clean kitchen towel, let it drain really well. And Fergus says, I would really love some milk. You may not have this chocolate milk, but he feels the need to say hello. Hi, Fergie. Hello, Fergie. So that's how you make chocolate hazelnut or Nutella milk with raw hazelnuts, a little bit of oats, some cocoa or cacao powder, and we use dates. You could use the sweetener of your choice or even leave it unsweetened. Totally up to you. Enjoy.